Good morning. It is such an honor and a privilege to serve as the president of this organization over the past year. As many of you know, this organization really has been the backbone of my academic career. And when thinking about what I wanted to share with you today during my presidential address, I thought what I would try and do is show to you guys why membership in an organization such as this matters so much. As Helen Keller would say, alone we can do so little, but together we can do so much. Let's take, for example, the turtle on a fence post. Now, we're going to make an assumption that this turtle actually wants to be up on this post. He obviously did not get there, though, by himself. Clearly, a team had to help get him up there. Probably will help get him down. I think we all need that team just around us to help us do things. What is teamwork? Teamwork is the ability to work together towards a common vision, the ability to direct your individual accomplishments towards organizational objectives, and it's the fuel that allows common people such as us to achieve uncommon results. I recently joined Twitter about a year ago because I was asked to give a Twitter journal club. I had no idea how to get on Twitter. I had to ask my young partners to help me. It was sort of embarrassing, and as my children will tell you, most of my friends on Twitter are medical people, and they think it's really boring what I tweet about. But that being said, if you look at Twitter recently, what you'll see is a lot of kind of depressing things in the medical Twitter. There's a lot of talk about gun violence and prevention, which I fully support. There's a lot of talk about he for she and about inclusion and diversity and burnout and unhappiness. And you would get the sense, if you looked on surgical Twitter, that life is not that happy as a surgeon. And I don't think that's actually true, but I think there are some real challenges that we're facing in 2020 as surgeons. And so what I'd like to do today is talk to you guys a little bit about those challenges and about how being a member of a society such as this can help overcome some of those. We're going to talk specifically about inclusion and diversity. We're going to talk about mentorship, which is a huge passion of mine, as was pointed out. And we're going to talk a little bit about burnout and emotional exhaustion. I'd like to start by talking about implicit bias. This is something that's bantered about quite a bit now, but I just want to make sure everybody understands what we're talking about. So implicit bias is the unconscious attitudes that arise from your preformed mental associations. These are natural, they're pervasive, you learn them from your culture. They often conflict with what you would consciously endorse, and they can even be directed towards your own group. I'm embarrassed to tell you, when I took the implicit bias association test, I was strongly biased towards men in science and women not in science. And I would like to think I'm a scientist as a surgeon, a biology major at UVA. I am married to a Hokie, though, so we do go to a lot of Virginia Tech football games. It's important that these implicit biases often can predict your behavior more accurately than your explicit measures. So, are you pushy if you're a woman who's skilled at using reasoning to persuade someone to do or believe something? Or are you actually just persuasive? I've been described as aggressive. Is this the way in which a woman who has or shows a confident personality is labeled? Or really am I assertive? I think it really depends upon the gender of the person of which you're talking about. This is clearly not just in surgery. This comes from mainstream media, so CNN. 4 ways you might be displaying hidden bias in your everyday life. And I'd like everyone in here just to take a second to think about these questions. Who are your 3 best friends? Think about how much they look like you. Why do you live where you live? Is there a reason? Have you ever said you only date a certain type or you only marry a certain type? And I think this one, I'm certainly guilty of it. Have you ever described somebody as your female doctor or a gay friend? These are all things that we do all the time, and these are all examples of implicit biases in our everyday life. Our current physician workforce in no way looks like the population demographics of the United States, and I think this is really important. So looking specifically at the academic surgery workforce, 24% of faculty are women. If you look at this, though, 26% of assistant professors are women. This goes down to 13% of associate professors, 8% of full professors, and we're at 5.4% for surgical chairs that are women right now. If you look at the underrepresented minority faculty, these numbers are even worse. Overall, only 9.8% of faculty, African American 3.6%, and Hispanic American 3.4%. I had the opportunity several years ago to moderate a session on implicit bias at the American College of Surgeons, and it was really interesting to me. A very well-spoken African American senior leader stood up and he said, you know, it's interesting, if you look at the data on women in surgery, we're making a lot of progress, we're doing a lot. If you look at the underrepresented minorities, those lines are remaining flat, and this becomes a major point of focus, I think, for us going forward in surgery. There's also significant pay disparity. This looks specifically at gender pay disparity. This was an analysis of 24 US public universities looking at sex differences in the physician salaries. This is adjusted for everything they could think of adjusting it for. They adjusted it for specialty, for age, for rank, and for productivity, and found that women physicians make $20,000 less annually. This is a 2016 study. Women surgeons made $32,000 less annually, and if you're a surgical subspecialist, that number's even higher at $44,000 a year. As Dr. Caprice Greenberg so eloquently pointed out in her presidential address in 2017 at the Association for Academic Surgery, if you assume a 30-year working lifetime for most people, that earning discrepancy is between $1.2 and $2 million. These are real numbers, these are huge numbers. Two subsequent studies presented at the American Surgical Association in 2018 sought to figure out what we could do about this. So they looked at objective compensation plans and found that the gender pay gap could be improved with that, although it was not equalized. The recommendation was that this process has to be transparent. I think we can all agree that this pay disparity is not acceptable. And our leadership of our national organizations is who needs to raise the awareness of this and offer solutions. I can tell you right now, if you're not a member of those organizations, you will not have a voice. You have to be a member. Membership matters. So this is a picture of my mom. My mom raised 6 kids, 5 girls and 1 boy. I'm the second oldest. That's part of why I'm so bossy. My mom was one of the first 2 women in the state of Minnesota to graduate from law school in the late 1960s. She took a job as an associate at a large law firm in Minneapolis. And in 1971, my dad, a rheumatologist, got drafted to the Army and was sent to Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio. I had just been born. I was, I think, about 3 months old when we moved down to San Antonio. My mom went down to start looking for jobs in Texas as a lawyer. She had a couple of years' experience, and she was told at one law firm, there has never been a woman lawyer in Texas, and there never will be. And this was in 1971. So my mom returned to Minnesota after my dad's Army station. She continued to work as a lawyer doing family law, and then ended up teaching law at Hamlin Law School. She also taught all 6 of her kids, my brother and my 4 sisters and I, that we really could do anything we wanted. But I really hope that my generation of surgeon and leader helps to continue to overcome this disparity, following in the footsteps of people like my mom and the generation before us. Bias also has a really significant impact on surgical teams. Women and underrepresented minorities in medicine are subjected to verbal and nonverbal slights every day that impacts our performance. There are a number of different types of bias that I'd like to highlight. Affinity bias is that a sense where you want to gravitate to people who look, feel, or act similar to you. Stereotyping is that when you assume someone else's abilities based on cultural or societal norms. And the microaggressions are the everyday verbal and nonverbal slights, snubs, and insults, even if they're unintentional, and most of them are unintentional, which communicate a hostile, derogatory, or negative message. I'd like to delve a little bit further into the microaggressions. So when we talk about the microassaults, those are often conscious, what we would call old-fashioned discrimination, something like name-calling. The micro-insults are the often unconscious, demeaning messages that people are facing every single day that's about a specific aspect of your person's identity. Those are the things like when I walk into a room and the patient immediately assumes I'm the nurse. Or they say, I haven't seen a doctor, and you're like, oh, I'm the attending surgeon, so you actually have. Or if you assume that somebody's there just because they're the token woman, for example. Micro-invalidations are often unconscious, and these are exclusion or dismissal of other people's feelings, thoughts, and reality. Things like, Dr. Britt is just being oversensitive talking about this. On a macro level, we talk about the environmental microaggressions. These are workplace reflections of these microaggressions. I think on an individual level, we can teach people to try and deal with these. There's a lot of research going into, actually, it's hard for me to say, well, you just did a microaggression towards me, but it'd be much easier for me to defend Dr. Richards from a microaggression, for example. One method I'd like to introduce you to is microaffirmations. So microaffirmations are where you can positively recognize, validate, and empower somebody within your work environment or your home environment. You make individuals who feel marginalized feel more welcome, visible, and capable. There's some easy examples of this, just appreciative inquiry. Hey, I heard you had a really rough night on call last night. How are you doing? Recognize, validate people's feelings, reward positive behavior, intentionally include people, which is something this society is so good at, and introducing team members by role and by name. So if you round with me, if you're a medical student, if you're a resident, we'll walk into the room and I'll say, I'm Dr. Rebecca Britt, I'm the attending surgeon, this is my resident, this is my medical student. Just these little things can really help with some of these microaggressions. I think societies, though, are the answer to overcoming a lot of this, and I think societies are recognizing this. These are just two different societies I'd like to highlight that have published papers after they've started diversity and inclusion task forces. The American Surgical Association put a white paper out, Ensuring Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion in Academic Surgery. And the Association of Women Surgeons, He for She Task Force, looks at reducing implicit bias. I can tell you that at Academic Surgical Congress this week, we had to have a bylaws change to start a task force for diversity and inclusion. This is something that our organizations are taking on, and I think is going to make a tremendous difference. In looking at what some of the original task forces have recommended to overcome these biases, the first thing that everyone is doing is advocating for membership in regional and national societies. Specifically target the underrepresented for committees and leadership roles. Invite women and underrepresented minorities to speak or to moderate. This shows diversity in prominent roles as well as elevates the individual. When you look at faculty diversity at national meetings, I'm going to tell you, I saw a number yesterday that I was really shocked by. We looked at our gender diversity in this organization and found that only 13% of our members are women. If you're under the age of 40, 40% of the members are women right now. But actually, my age group, 40 to 49, and I'll let you figure out where I am in that age group, there were only, I think, 7% of my age group that were women, which is really shocking because I look around the room here and I know a lot of the women in this room, and you guys are in the same demographic as me, so we need to get out there and get our friends involved. But anyway, this study looked at 6 national surgical meetings with over 4,000 participants. And it did find that actually women are actively involved in societies. 32% of the abstracts were presented by a woman. However, if you were a woman, you were much more likely to present an abstract than to be on a panel or a moderator, with an odds ratio of 3.4. If there was a woman moderator, it significantly increased the rate of women participants on that panel. Looking at membership trends, I think there's some hope. So, Society of Black Academic Surgeons in 2016 had 115 members. But in 2019, so in 3 years, more than doubled their membership to 251 members. I think people are realizing you have to be a member, you have to have a voice. If you look at their meeting attendance, it went from 198 to 323. And I can tell you, the Association of Women Surgeons, I don't have the actual numbers, but I can tell you in 2019, I did not get to go to their meeting because it was sold out weeks in advance, and that's the first time that's ever happened. I think people are really looking at this and saying, we need to be a member. I'm going to switch now to talk about my passion for mentorship. So a mentor is someone of advanced rank or experience who guides, teaches, and develops a novice. I get asked a lot about mentorship, and I'm going to give you a couple of pieces of advice. Find mentors early and in multiple places. I think it's critical to identify mentors at both the junior and the senior level, and often the most successful relationships are the ones in which the mentee initiates the relationship. This is one of my favorite pictures because this is a couple years ago. In this picture, I'm both a mentor and a mentee, so you can be both. Here I am with my boss, Dr. L.D. Britt, and then in between us are three. At the time, they were surgical residents. All of them now are actually either fellows or faculty members in acute care surgery. But in this, again, I'm both a mentor and a mentee. There are a number of different domains for mentorship. You can get mentored in anything. On a personal level, I've mentored people on work-life balance, on building confidence, on professional development, jobs or networking, skill development, clinical, time management. One of my favorite sessions I ever had was talking about time management with somebody who I consider a mentee as well as a friend. We were taking a red-eye flight back from a meeting in San Diego. We went up to La Jolla, we rented bikes, and we went and biked through the hills of La Jolla overlooking the ocean. But we spent a lot of the time talking about time management and how to do that better. So mentorship does not have to happen in a closed room where it's, you can do this anywhere. Academic guidance, I give a lot of mentorship on how to get promoted. I've been on the promotions committee a long time and helped rewrite some guidelines, so if anybody wants help on that, I'm happy to help you. Navigating academia or administrative skills. And then research, I think, is ripe for mentorship, both collaboration, how to write a manuscript, and how to get grants. I'd like to introduce you guys to the concept of managing up as a mentee. This is a business concept where the mentee takes ownership of and directs the mentorship relationship. The mentee is responsible for letting the mentor know what they really need out of the relationship, setting the agenda, listening, completing tasks. It's so critical in your mentor-mentee relationships to complete the task, and request feedback. It's been shown in the business world it's far easier for the relationship to develop with this strategy, and it's much more productive for both the mentor and the mentee. So how do you actually functionally do this? Well, I think it's important, if you're looking for a mentor, clarify what you're looking for. What are your values? What's your motivation? And what's your personal preference? What's your work style? Do you need to have this relationship where you're in person, or can you do this over the phone? Can you do it on a bike ride, or do you need to be in an office? Figure out what guidance has worked well for you in the past, and clarify your needs and identify where your skill gaps are. You have to know what you're looking for as a mentee. I think this is one of the things my boss taught me so well. You have to have specific goals. I'll go into Dr. Britt's office and he'll say to me, all right, that's fine. What are we doing in 3 months? What are we doing in a year? What are we doing in 5 years? I think if you set it up that way, you're going to be much more successful. There are a number of formal mentoring programs for those of you who are having trouble finding a mentor. I'd like to just briefly highlight a couple of those. The Young Fellows Association of the American College of Surgeons has a great mentorship program that I had the opportunity to run for a number of years. This matches newly practicing surgeons with senior leadership in the college, and several of the mentees and mentors from that program are in this room today, so thank you. Women in Surgery of the American College of Surgeons also has a program that matches women surgeons of all different levels up with senior leadership. And I was a participant many years ago as a mentee in that program. I got interviewed, and then they said, I'm going to match you with Dr. Grace Rosicki. And I said, all right. So that was great. AAST and East, from a specialty standpoint, both have great mentorship programs I've not participated in, but I have friends who have, and I think they're fantastic. And I know that other organizations have similar programs. On a society level, there are certain mentorships for specific things like educational research. So the Surgical Education Research Fellowship, I have been both a mentee and a mentor in. This is where you take a several-day course about how to do an educational project, and then you're matched with somebody from another institution with the goal, they set a specific goal to present at a national meeting. I'd like to also talk briefly about speed mentoring, which was an innovative program that I introduced at the American College of Surgeons about 5 years ago. This is kind of like speed dating, where you spend 5 minutes and you meet multiple different mentors. And the benefit of this is that then you can perhaps figure out which one you really click with and make it the best out of and establish a more formal relationship. When we talk about mentorship, it's so critical to also talk about sponsorship, because mentorship and sponsorship are not the same. So sponsorship is powerful support by a powerful, influential person to help with the advancement and promotion of an individual. This person has to have the power to open doors for you and advocate for somebody who's undervalued, who may otherwise be not recognized. It's really important for the sponsor to focus on finding these high-performing individuals that otherwise might not get placed. So just to differentiate again, your sponsor is somebody highly placed with significant influence, and they act as an advocate. But your mentor, it doesn't depend on whether they're junior or senior necessarily, and they work more as a counselor. And I love this quote from Kathy Hanna of KPMG, where she says, "A coach tells you what to do. A mentor will listen to you and speak with you, but a sponsor talks about you. We need to find people to talk about us." Again, looking specifically at women, women remain underrepresented at the highest levels of medicine, and certainly in the academic medicine C-suite. And we do know that women are significantly less likely than men to have a sponsor. But if you look at these numbers, 13% of women, 19% of men, those numbers are really, really low. There's lots of formal sponsorship programs in business world, but not many in academic medicine. In fact, no formal ones that I'm aware of, and I've done fairly good research on this. I think this is a huge opportunity for improvement and a place where our organizations can take a lead. I'd like to take a moment here to thank some of the giants upon whose shoulders I have stood in my course. While the Southeastern Surgical Congress does not formally have a mentorship program, I can tell you right now that almost every mentor and sponsor that I have is a member of this organization. I think for many years we've done an amazing job for trainees at connecting them with the leadership and providing opportunities, and really for our junior faculty. Several years ago, we started the Young Fellows Committee as an opportunity to advance the needs of the young fellow, those who've just gotten out of that residency or fellowship bubble and are out on their own for the first time and looking for ways to network and connect with people. I think this group remains a robust networking opportunity and is such a great place to get to know your mentors and your sponsors. So I'd like to talk about a couple of those people, and there are so many of you, even as I'm looking across the room, there's too many to even include, but Dr. L.D. Britt, who unfortunately was unable to make this meeting today, took a chance on me and hired me as a faculty member in 2004. At that time, I had no research, I had no administrative experience, but he gave me a job. And he said, "Well, you seem to have a passion." I said, "All right, well, we can start with that. Let's go." Those of you who know me, I think, recognize how influential he has been on me, both professionally and personally. He introduced me to the Southeastern Surgical Congress in 2004. And in fact, my very first paper was a case report in the American Surgeon. I've not missed a single Southeastern Surgical Congress since that time, and I highly recommend those of you who are here as young faculty, fellows, and residents continue to do that. He provided me innumerable sponsorship opportunities throughout my career, including putting me on the CME committee of Southeastern Surgical in 2007. Through that, I got to know many, many of my current friends, sponsors, and mentors. The other person on this picture is Dr. Erwin Hirsch, who was my mentor in surgical residency. Dr. Hirsch taught me to strongly fight for the patient. He taught me to be a teacher, and he taught me to be a leader. He died in 2008 doing what he loved best, which was in a sailing accident off the coast of Maine. But he does remain that little voice on my shoulder if I'm ever trying to make a bad decision. I always feel like Papa Hirsch is up there looking at me. That's why I put this picture of him. If you'll see in this picture, he's like hiding behind the corner. And you know there are those people in your life that have eyes in the back of their head. That's right, I'm talking to my 3 kids right now. So he just was always around the corner. My whole 5 years of residency, he always seemed to have his finger on the pulse of what was going on and was an amazing sponsor and mentor for me. Within the Southeastern Surgical Society, there are so many people who have meant so much to me. I'd like to specifically thank Dr. Adams, Dr. Rozicki, Dr. Feliciano, Dr. Richardson, Dr. Hanks, the executive council with whom I've worked the last several years, Dr. Wendy Green for throwing a great meeting this year, Dr. Ken Sharp. There's so many things I could say, I don't even really know where to start. So you are the epitome of this organization. You have mentored and sponsored more young surgeons than I can even count. Thank you for everything you've done for me. I really do appreciate it. I can honestly say I don't think I've had a promotion or a new organization that I've been put up for since 2004 that Dr. Ken Sharp has not written me a letter for. And in fact, he called me in September and he said, I haven't written a letter for you in a while. And so here I am applying for another organization. So thank you, Ken. Yeah, that's a true story. I'd like to thank my EVMS family. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for supporting me, challenging me, growing with me. Specifically, my acute care surgery partners who cover so seamlessly for each other. Many of us are here. There's 2 of them left at home, but we've got 4 of us here as well. So thank you guys for that. This picture in the middle is me eating a shrimp that has eyeballs on it. For that, I'd like to thank Dr. Feliberti and Dr. Bandy for helping me to try and be a little more exploratory in my eating. And then I'd like to thank Dr. Lynn Wyrider, who retired last year, who is a mentor and a friend and an attendee attending. So those of you who don't know what that means, let me just read this slide. It's that horrifying moment when you're looking for an attending, then you realize you are an attending. So you look for a smarter attending, someone more successfully attending, the attendee attending. So again, Len Wyrider for many years was my attendee attending, and I would like to hope that he taught me to also be an attendee attending. Perhaps the most important thing that I've gained by society membership in my career, though, relates to networking and the relationships that you form. I think we can all agree it's impossible to go through life alone. And more, like I said, we're talking about burnout and mental exhaustion. So what is burnout? Burnout is fatigue, frustration, or apathy that results from prolonged stress, overwork, or intense activity. It can manifest with high rates of emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, a low sense of personal accomplishment, and chronic occupational stress. If you don't think it's happening in surgery, open your eyes. It's real in surgery. This is a 2008 survey done by the American College of Surgeons that looked at almost 8,000 surgeons. And what they found in this survey was that 40% of surgeons were burned out. 30% had symptoms of depression, and 28% had their mental quality of life score greater than a half standard deviation below the population norm. These numbers are pretty terrifying. In 2019, the New England Journal of Medicine looked at 7,409 general surgical residents that took this test after taking the ABSITE. They found that 32% of surgical residents had experienced gender discrimination. And I thought this was really interesting. Most commonly, it was from the patient and the patient's family. 16% had racial discrimination, and 30% had verbal or physical abuse, with 10% sexual harassment. And this is really depressing. This was most commonly by the attending surgeons. Weekly burnout symptoms in our residents are high. 38.5% reported that, with 4.5% of our residents having suicidal thoughts. This is far above the population norm for their age. If you had been mistreated, there was a really strong association with burnout, with an odds ratio of 2.9. I think these numbers are sobering. While I have never personally felt burned out, I've seen very close friends go through burnout, and I've watched their despair and their struggles at work, and it's really moved me. There's a lot of current research going on about what to do about burnout. On the resident level, the second trial has just launched in response to these numbers here, and that's with 320 surgical programs looking at ways to improve resident wellness. I think in the workplace, we're talking about wellness. We're talking about meditation, yoga, getting out more, maybe trying to lower our work burden. Burnout and workplace exhaustion are certainly not unique to medicine. If you look across the country, we're seeing this more and more in lots of different places. There was a fascinating article in the Harvard Business Review that emphasized the correlation of workplace exhaustion, burnout, and loneliness. And I don't think we talk about loneliness very much. So what is loneliness? Loneliness is an emotionally painful feeling. It leads to disengagement. It can have tremendously significant professional and personal impact. In a meta-analysis of over 400,000 people, if you had positive social relationships, you had a 50% increase in survival. And this is even more startling. With poor social relationships, 29% increase in cardiovascular disease, and a 32% increase in strokes. It can affect more than just your mental health. We know that if you're socially connected, you have lower anxiety, lower depression, and increased work productivity. And this study is just about to come out. It's only on EPUB right now in JAMA Surgery, but this is a reflection of retired surgeons. And I'd like you to note that over half of retired surgeons wish they had spent more time with their family and for personal wellness, or joined a less stressful practice environment. We should learn from our retired surgeons. So what can we do for this? Membership in societies has allowed me the opportunity to network and make tremendous friends with a diverse group of surgeons from around the country. These are just some of my friends in surgery. And I want to thank you guys so much for all the laughter you guys have given me. It has been amazing. People say, well, how do you get to know people? How do you know all these people in surgery? Well, let me tell you, there's a lot of different ways within societies to network and get to know people. I think it's great to get involved in committees early and as often as you can. I'm a little bit of a doer, you may have figured out, but still, even if you're not a doer, get involved in a committee and make it a committee that you're passionate about, because you're much more likely to work hard on that committee and meet like-minded people who have similar interests to you. Volunteer to do things. Southeastern Surgical is famous for sending out a, what would you like to volunteer and do? So volunteer to lead the poster sessions. Volunteer to do the mock orals. Volunteer to be on a panel. Volunteer to be on a committee. I think these things are critical for you. My residents will recognize this one, but it's so important to go to the meals and the receptions that the organizations are having. And don't just stand in the corner and talk to the EVMS people, because we can see each other in Norfolk. But go out and meet the people who are there and make friendships with them. And if you have trouble meeting people, if you're a bit more of an introvert than me, come up and talk to me. I'm a great connector. I'm happy to introduce you to people. Again, I want to thank my friends that I've met through this process. You guys have kept me grounded. You've staved off my burnout. And I like to say, find your tribe. I think it's so critical. Because the reason life works at all is because not everyone in your tribe is crazy at the same time. Because I'm a positive person, I want to share with you some of my positive thoughts and energy. This is a book that if you're interested in reading about burnout, I think this is a great book. It follows a businessman who's burned out, emotionally exhausted, disengaged, and uninterested in life. And this book is 10 rules to fuel your life, work, and team with positive energy. What I'm trying to get you guys to do is what this shows. Train your mind to see the good in everything. Positivity, I do believe, is the choice you make, and the happiness of your life can depend upon the quality of your thoughts. So what I would like to do is just share a couple of these rules from the Energy Bus and how they relate to surgery. Rule number 1. You are the driver of your bus. So what do we mean by that? What is your vision? You have choices. You have choices in life, you have choices in work, you have choices in your family, in your relationships, and in your team. I love these stairs that I ran by one day. They said, there's no elevator to success, you have to take the steps. So what do we mean by that? That means you have to take responsibility, and I just want you to think about this. If you're not driving your bus, you are at the whim of someone else's travel plans, and you don't know where you're going to go. Rule number 3, fuel your ride with positive energy. So again, another run I was on at a meeting in Texas. I ran through the University of Texas campus at Austin, and I came across this cornerstone, which is the core value or the core purpose of their institution, to transform lives for the benefit of society. So let's think about that for a minute as a surgeon. Sometimes our work can be overwhelming, it can be depressing, it can be hard. But just think about how lucky you are to actually be a surgeon for 1 minute. Think about the amount of people whose lives you have the opportunity to transform. You have a tremendous impact every single day on changing someone's life. Rule 4 and Rule 8 I've clumped together. Rule 4 is invite people on your bus, and Rule 8 is love your passengers. I think this is so critical for us to combat burnout, isolation, loneliness. People really need to feel appreciated, so make time for them, listen to them, and recognize their accomplishments. Or maybe everything we really needed to know, we learned in kindergarten. I particularly like Rule 11. Live a balanced life. Learn some and drink some and draw some and sing and dance and play and work every day some. I'd like to just take a moment here to thank my family, without whom none of what I would have accomplished would be possible. My mom and dad, who taught me how important family time was. They encouraged my many adventures, and I had some adventures. They taught me also about the importance of education and independence. This is a picture of my mom and dad last Labor Day weekend. We went to the state fair, and they had all but 2 of their grandchildren together to celebrate. At the bottom here is a picture of my family, my siblings, circa 1995. I think I look the most normal in it because I just have a ponytail, but my sisters aren't really happy I put this picture up, but that's okay. Thank you to my family for sharing so many laughs with me over the years and keeping it real. To my 3 kids, Charlie, Emily, and Lane, you guys are absolutely amazing. I can't tell you how much it means to me that you guys made it down here this weekend. Okay, I'm gonna pull it together, sorry. We really have had a lot of fun. I would like to point out in this picture, though, Dr. Richards, that Lane and I are actually UVA fans. I'm just married to a Hokie, and we lose every year, but we were there this year, and UVA won. So to all my UVA fans, just pointing that out. Thank you guys so much, though, for everything that you do, for supporting me, for allowing me to be gone, and for helping me laugh, play, get to watch you guys in sports. It's been great. And then finally, I'd like to thank my husband, David, who really is the rock and stability in our lives. People always say, "Where's your husband?" when I go to these meetings. And I'd like to point out I have 2 high schoolers and a 6th grader, so a lot of times David's at home making things work for us. Thank you for supporting me, for always keeping me honest. I think we all need that. And for loving me. I get asked a lot how to do work-life balance, and I think the most important thing is to choose the right partner, and I can tell you I knocked that one out of the park. So I'm working on these 2 recommendations that I make to show appreciation and prioritize our time together, but I really am so lucky that I have you, and thank you. In closing, it has been a tremendous honor and a privilege to serve as the president of this organization. I've gained so much from my membership, it's hard for me to put it into words, but I hope that my words today have resonated a little bit with each of you in terms of the benefits of membership. Every year, my family picks the word of the year. So for 2 years in a row, my family made me use the word exhale. I'd like to tell you I've gotten past that. My residents will occasionally still tell me to exhale, and my children definitely tell me that. But this year, my word of the year is savor, and savor means to enjoy life to the fullest. Despite everything that I've talked about that ails our surgical world, I really do still savor the responsibility of being a surgeon. And I hope I have shared some of my thoughts with you on how to fall in love with surgery again. We took our daughter to see Hamilton, my youngest daughter, Lane, and we got in the car afterwards, and as Lane is typical does, she says, so basically it was about like, how do you want to be remembered, and who do you want to tell your story? I hope you all want to be remembered by the incredible impact you can have as a surgeon. That impact is on your family, it's on your students, it's on your residents, it's on your partners, it's on your patients, and it's really an amazing thing. Thank you.